It was October the 5th, 2005, when the world of young adult fantasy made the transition from wizards to vampires. That date will go down in history as the date in question that Stephenie Meyer's young adult vampire romance Twilight was published for all of the world to read.
Let the demonetization process begin!
Nearly 15 years later, and the result of that decision to publish a series about a brooding mouth breather and her enduring quest to enter into an eternal high school romance were cataclysmic in the world of pop culture, the ripple effect causing a slew of never-ending parody productions, fanfiction writings that were themselves elevated to a status meriting their own production and film adaptations, and attempted original takes on the world of teenage vampiredom to varying degrees of success.
Hello, brother.
I'm Elena.
I'm Stefan.
His name is Stefan Salvatore.
This is not one of those success stories, I'm afraid. The House of Night book series began its long, self-encumbered and unsuccessful journey to relevancy in 2007, a few short years after the publication of Stephenie Meyer's work, taking many of the most compelling components shown to be popular in young adult fantasy. For example, obviously from Stephenie Meyer's Twilight, it of course took the idea that vampires could be gorgeous creatures of the night. From J.K. Rowling's Harry Potter, it took the concept of sending one specially afflicted, troubled youth off to a boarding school where they were to find the faculty questionable at best and deadly at worst. And from Nickelodeon's Avatar: The Last Airbender, it quite literally took the concept of elemental bending. More to the point, it took the concept of a single individual who can manipulate all of the elements, including spirit, to a blatant extreme.
But I believe Aang can save the world.
I read a few of these books in my misguided youth when I was a mere middle school kid and had the time and the urge to read anything and everything I could get my hands on. They didn't hold my interest for very long, but I will say that I was surprised even at that age to find that this series could be found on the shelves of a middle school library of all places. Allow me to explain. First off, we have to define what a vampire is in the world of House of Night for you to understand my utter chagrin with this series. In this world designed by PC Cast, vampires, spelled with a Y rather than an I, exist along that of humans in this alternative reality and are chosen by a goddess, then marked by a tracker as a fledgling. The mark in question is signified by an outline of a blue crescent-shaped moon appearing on the forehead, and it means that you're about to embark on a host of biological changes. Essentially, you've hit vampire puberty. There's actually a whole bunch of science lore written on the House of Night wiki that specifies exactly what happens and what's going down and emphasizes the importance of certain aspects of the change that I won't bother to get into for the sake of brevity, but we'll link to if you are interested in further reading. All you need to know is that the beginning of the vampire puberty is actually extremely deadly for all fledgling vampires, and if they don't go to their special boarding school, they will most certainly die. And even if they do go to the special vampire school, about 1 out of every 10 fledglings will still die due to rejecting the change from fledgling to vampire, so there's that. Although, I'll say this, if you do reject the change and die, there's also a possibility that you could make a complete left-hand turn in the opposite direction, come back to life, and become a red vampire, which is its own thing that blatantly subverts the world build that PC Cast establishes herself in the book, but I digress. The difference between vampire and fledgling is so subtle in this reality that it warrants a blatant forehead sign grafted into one's skin, quite literally. Fledglings typically have an outlined crescent moon tattoo, while full-fledged vampires have filled-in crescent tats with the addition of other deliberately evident and intricate patterns lining their faces, literally divined onto their skins, because we just absolutely need to have something to differentiate ourselves. More importantly, however, it is my sincerest belief that this was actually a tactic done in an effort to start some sort of trademark fashion fad in young adult women, akin to the Hunger Games braid or the hand number thing from Beautiful Creatures, if you're familiar with that work. Which, if I know young adult teenager girls like I think I do, is definitely what exactly happened at some point, at some place. Okay, but what else denotes vampires in this world other than the ridiculously gay tattoos on their face? Well, continuing on with the themes of Twilight, we have that heightened beauty aspect. Vampires are no longer ugly, grotesque creatures of the night and the undead. They are now gorgeous. Vampires are hella more attractive than your average human counterpart. Big surprise. And then, of course, there are the heightened senses that vampires possess, the healing abilities that they possess at an elevated rate, the enhanced physicality in super strength, and the ability to make themselves invisible, practice magic, and that's magic spelled with a K, because why the hell not? Oh, and the second entirely different and unique goddess-given gift thing that they have called an affinity, because in a world where all of our characters are virtual gods amongst humans with no defining traits other than their tattoos, we need something to differentiate our primary pristine character types, don't we? So basically, they're superhuman, which pisses me off. The series itself never takes advantage of this overpowered nonsense in any meaningful way, nor does anything cool with it at all. The full extent of interesting things that happens are rituals and school/political drama. All of this potential firepower, and you reduce your characters to a never-ending barrage of love interests to be thrown around like they're pansies? Give me a break. To reiterate, the vampires making up a majority of the character lineup are perfect in every way, 100%, save for the one weakness that they have is, of course, ultraviolet sensitivity. But if you think that would be impactful at all to anyone, you would be wrong. It won't kill them. On the contrary, ladies and gentlemen, it will just give them a massive headache is all. Unless you're a red vampire, which is a completely separate thing, because these are blue vampires we're talking about. Okay, now that we've completely redefined what it means to be a vampire, alternative spelling be damned, let's dive into a few of the characters, why don't we? Because that's the only way we're going to get a solid idea of what this book is about, because the entire plot is entirely driven by the relationships between all the characters. There are a number of characters that I really want to talk about, but the one that we absolutely must spend time on, the most time on, of course, is our main character, Zoe Redbird. And why is that? Because Zoe is the main character and she's special. What makes Zoe Redbird such a special character that she needs to be our main character, everyone, other than the fact that she was marked to be a vampire in the very first chapter? Well, absolutely everything about her, that's what. You see, our main character suffers from a rather very common affliction we happen upon in young adult fiction, referred to as the Chosen One trope. I'm sure you're familiar with it. A Chosen One is a character that is held in the esteem for their expected potential, and that is exactly Zoe Redbird personified. As once Zoe has been marked by the tracker, she happens to also have her fledgling mark, the one that's supposed to be just an outline of a crescent moon, completely filled in, which just doesn't happen according to the rules of the world that PC Cass has established herself in her own book. Only to then so egregiously disregard all of that painstaking world build that she's just put all this effort into. It makes no sense. Chosen One tropes are not inherently bad on their own, I will admit this. It's just particularly horridly done in this series is all. That's why I'm pointing it out. But if you think that's all of the writing crimes that our author is guilty of, you'd be sorely mistaken, my dude. Remember when I referenced Avatar: The Last Airbender? Well, it seems that our main character, Zoe, happens to have an affinity for all 5 of the elements. That's earth, air, fire, water, and spirit, in addition to being a fully marked fledgling hand-chosen by the goddess of the night, Nyx. Not to mention her powerful blood, which allows her to draw upon old magic, which includes such perks as being able to see through her seer stone and summon the Fae. And we can't also forget that she is immune to telepathy and has a powerful life force that protects her from magical attacks, which essentially makes her one of the most powerful, unstoppable forces on the planet. Didn't I mention she's only 16? My point is, she's young as fuck, barely has any experience, and somehow is the most powerful vampire fledgling to have ever fledglinged ever. Unfortunately, the only really interesting things that actually happen to Zoe are the never-ending stream of love interests that oh so conveniently drive the plot forwards, which are usually happening simultaneously with each other. All these boys who are all conveniently taller and older than her to varying degrees, and also deliciously hot, apparently, just simply cannot keep themselves from 16-year-old Zoe. Oh boy. You thought that the love triangle between Edward and Bella and Jacob was bad? You got another thing coming here, guys. Zoe is actually perfectly emblematic of the most egregious issue that faces this book series. She is non-committal. Let me give you several examples of this. We have Heathlock, her 18-year-old on and off again human boyfriend since 3rd grade, a muscly tough guy football type who subverts expectations entirely by actually being intelligent and self-sacrificing. They imprint in the 1st book and again in the 5th book. And just so we're aware, imprinting in the House of Night series is of course considered the most and deepest of profound forms of intimacy one may ever experience. Keep that in mind for when we get to her 3rd love interest. Then there's Eric Knight, her on and off again 19-year-old fledgling student turned vampire professor boyfriend who's the pretty-faced and most popular, most desired actor type boyfriend person who subverts our expectations by being a mega nerd on the simple basis that he likes the 300 and Star Wars, and who just wants people to see him for more than his looks. And then we get to imprint number 2, Professor Lauren Blake. Yes, you heard me right, Professor. Zoe's extremely hot 24-year-old poetry professor at the House of Night who takes her virginity in the 3rd book. But it's okay though, because in 3rd book she's 17, not in those first 2 books where she's 16. It's this book where she's 17. It's okay, because this is where she loses her virginity. While she's still in a relationship with Eric Knight, by the way, in case you were wondering, effectively forming an imprint with Lauren. Anyway, Blake subverts our expectations by actually being in league and in love with the evil bad person of the series. Now, before we continue on with our love interests, because there are many more, I'd like to take a moment of your time to ponder how in the hell that this book series was something that was available to me in my middle school library. I'm not kidding. No joke. This was something that happened in the very 1st book. Let me give you a little excerpt of what I'm talking about and just exactly what it is that can be found, apparently, in middle school libraries across the nation.
I watched her fingers move, and my eyes widened in amazement when she drew the nail of her index finger down his thigh.
Definitely sexy. Definitely.
Unbelievably, her fingernail slashed through his jeans, just like it was a knife, and a line of fresh blood appeared, startling in its liquid redness. I didn't want it to, and it grossed me out. But at the sight of the blood, my mouth started watering. No, he snapped, putting his hands on her shoulders and trying to push her away from him. Oh, quit pretending. She laughed again, a mean, sarcastic sound. You know we'll always be together. She reached up with her tongue and licked along the line of blood. I shuddered. Against my will, I was completely mesmerized. Cut
Nothing sexier than blowjobs and blood, just saying.
it out. He was still pushing at her shoulders. I don't want to hurt you, but you're really starting to piss me off. Why can't you understand? We're not doing this anymore. I don't want you. You.
This is book 1, by the way. First couple of chapters. She just got to the school, but I digress.
Want me? You'll always want me. She unzipped his pants. I shouldn't be there. I shouldn't be saying this. I tore my eyes from his bloody thigh and took one step back. The guy's eyes lifted. He saw me. And then something truly bizarre happened. I could feel his touch through our eyes. I couldn't look away from him. The girl in front of him seemed to disappear. And all there was in the hallway was him and me, and the sweet, beautiful smell of his blood.
Okay, this is fucking gay. I'm done. No more. This is the end. Thanks, public school. Anyway, continuing on. James Stark is up next, and he is our 18-year-old extremely hot transfer student from Chicago, Illinois, House of Night branch, he's been gifted with an affinity for archery and, of course, the all-too-familiar urge to, cream his pants in the presence of our main character. This character subverts our expectations by immediately dying after we meet him in the 4th book, only to be resurrected later on. And then we have Kelowna, which sounds like a tropical fruity drink, and to be quite honest, that sounds delicious. He is an otherworldly, ageless, fallen angel demigod. That's not something I made up, that is totally direct from the wiki. Destined to love a Cherokee-created woman named Aya, whom Kelowna believes to be Zoe, go figure, reborn. He's a distinctly sexually aggressive deviant who can and will do as he pleases with any woman he pleases to do it with, to his eventual downfall pre-book 1. This subverts our expectations because he's actually just a misunderstood puppy who just wants to be loved by his goddess of the night, Nyx, don't you know? And then finally we have Aurochs, who is a vessel created from the sacrifice of Zoe's mother and filled with the soul of one deceased Heath luck as a conduit by which the evil bad persons carry out their plot against our main character. The subversion here is of course obvious since Aurochs is possessed by Heath. As a result, Aurochs chooses lightness over darkness. Shocker. Oh my gosh, the good guys prevail. Who would have thunk it? There are a lot of other characters and definitely side snaps that I could take at each and every one of them, but I can't spoil everything for you. What if you get the urge to commit yourself to a series of mind-numbing stupidity? Who would I be then? As I said, the biggest crime of this book was in its reluctance to commit to any one single idea. The established rules for how vampires exist in this book are immediately subverted. The characters themselves are in a constant state of fluctuation between who they're described as and who they're portrayed as. The book suffers from an author who knew she wanted her main character to be special, but couldn't decide how to make her special, so she effectively just went with plans A through Z. And the main character switches jarringly between internal descriptions about the world before her to ADHD internal pop culture monologues that are supposed to remind us that this is a high school student speaking. And it's done so poorly. Ugh. If you hate yourself, I recommend diving into this nonsense. I mean, after all, in 2010, the series made the New York Times Children's Bestsellers list, so obviously it's got something going for it, I guess. Children's bestseller list. Really? The only school to get on level with me about this series was Henderson Junior High School in Stevensville, Texas, for sexual conduct and nudity. And they didn't just ban the whole series outright, they banned the whole series plus any prospective books that weren't even out yet. Yeah, so the series had its last book published in 2014, so as far as I'm aware, we have nothing further to look forward to within this series from a literary perspective. However, it should be noted that on Cast's website you can find a section called Movie Updates that states, quote, in 2011, Samuel Hadida at DeVries Films, the Resident Evil movie franchise, purchased the option for the House of Night series. Hadida hired an awesome screenwriter, Mark Hames, Kubo and the Two Strings. Mark and I worked together on the treatment and then the script for either the first movie or a pilot for a TV series. Davis Films has done nothing with it. No, there's nothing I can do about this. Yes, their contract will eventually expire in the fall of 2020. Until then, Christian and I are waiting impatiently, along with our fans, for Hadida to do something. Anything. I think you can imagine that we are even more frustrated than our readers by Davis Films and their lack of follow-through. Please focus your frustration on Davis Films and Samuel Hadida, rather than at Christian and me. Thank you. So, hopefully none of this series comes to a big screen fruition. I can hope for small blessings. Hopefully. Hey, you in the audience. Do you have any fanfictions, movies, books, and or other mediums of media that you'd like for me to suffer through or enjoy? I can do that too. Let me know using the comment section and or using one of my many links that can be found in the description down below. Peace.